Okay, hello everybody. It is 6:31 in New Orleans, so it's time for us to start. So we welcome you to another Design Thinking Gumbo workshop. And Design Thinking Gumbo is a series where we are sharing a delicious mix of design research tools and methods to help you to expand your taste for design thinking and design research. I'm Leslie Ann Noel, and I'm the Associate Director of Design Thinking for Social Impact of the Phyllis M. Taylor Center for Social Innovation and Design Thinking. So first, we want to acknowledge, Shaymaa, you're going to share, I think, your presentation?
Yes. Yep.
We have one slide that we would like to pull up. And I know that people are coming in, and we welcome you. All right, so we're going to start off with a land acknowledgement, where we acknowledge that we are not the first people who inhabit this land that we call New Orleans today. And we start this land acknowledgement to acknowledge the presence of the many tribes who originally occupied this place that we call New Orleans. And the tribes are listed on the slide. And if you would like to know more about why we do land acknowledgements, please visit nativeland.ca, native-land.ca. I'm going to give you a moment to take in the people who were here before us. Okay, and then we will drop the Native Land link in the chat. I'll drop it in. So Design Thinking Gumbo is led by our Design Thinking graduate assistants. And this was a series of 5 workshops in total that introduced the public, designers and non-designers, to research methods and how they can still be done remotely. We have focused our research around understanding the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. And some of the other workshops that you may have been present at or you may have missed, we had one on virtual ethnography, we had poetry as a tool for social activism, we had cultural probes, Design Thinking Gumbo about how to use cultural probes. And today our workshop is on critical utopian action research. Next week is the last workshop of the series, and it will be about narrative and storytelling. And it will be led by Sneha Rout and Michaeline Engelmeyer. And we'll drop that link in the chat as well. Now I'd like to hand you over to our graduate assistant, Dr. Shaymaa Abdalal, who will lead us in a workshop about today's topic, critical utopian action research. So over to you, Shaymaa.
Thank you so much, Dr. Noel. Hi, everyone. My name is Shaymaa Abdalal, and I'm a graduate assistant for design thinking for social impact here at the Taylor Center. I'm also a PhD candidate in tropical medicine at the School of Public Health and Tropical Medicine. I'd like us to warm up today by just sharing one word that describes how you are feeling at that moment. Just unmute yourself and say one word to describe how are you feeling at this very moment. Or you can always drop in the chat box one word to describe your feeling. It's okay if we talk over each other.
Curious.
Good. Hungry.
I hear curious, hungry. Anything in the chat?
Exhausted, excited. We have a few excited.
Okay, well, good to hear. I do want to let everyone know that this session will be recorded and we will be taking screenshot to feature on the Taylor Center website. The current COVID-19 crisis has ground to a halt work in many communities and work in design thinking. While there will never be a welcome time or a moment for such a crisis, this created the unique opportunity to explore the application of design thinking methods in remote and virtual way. So today's Design Thinking Gumbo session will explore an action research method called critical utopian action research. So, what is utopia? When people think about utopia, they often start with the Greek etymological roots that utopia means no place, or they go to the Thomas More classic 16th century fictional work, Utopia, where the primarily depicted fictional island and the amazing society, culture, politics, and how they lived, how they built their houses, punishment system, and so on. In fact, Thomas More was writing about a real Ethiopian traditional place from the 12th century to the 15th century, which most people do not know. And utopia has come to mean a place where life is perfect. Today's utopianism is a philosophy that encompasses a variety of ways of thinking about better society. It begins with seemingly simple yet powerful declaration that the present is inadequate and that things can be otherwise. Present in communities, social movement, and political discourse, its critique, society, and creatively uses the power of imagination to project futures free of the stranglehold of the time. Critical utopian action research simply embodies long-standing human impulse towards self-improvement. It is about making futures by combining design and foresight into a framework, kind of like a toolkit, enable people to look beyond the current time and available solutions. So what is critical action research? Critical action research is a school primarily prevalent within the Scandinavian action research community. The tradition is characterized by its practical interpretation using critical theory as a background for connecting critique, utopian thinking, and everyday knowledge to create and develop critical analysis in cooperation between researchers and participants. It is a concept of participation that has its primary goal to both involve participant in knowledge production and to emphasize commitment to action. The participatory research approach also holds notion of emancipation and democracy, both of the knowledge creation and the development within the field, and is generally concerned with the framing and understanding of research as democratic and open. It is for this reason that both approaches are valid for producing kind of knowledge that aims to be critical, reflexive, collective, participatory, and emancipatory. Dr. Noel used this method in her PhD, working with the school-aged children to create curriculum. Dr. Noel, would you please share with us your experience and some of your work?
Sure. So in my research, I wanted to tie design, the future, and agency together because I wanted to imagine a better education for a child like my son. So I actually used critical utopian action research to design a curriculum where I was asking children to focus on 3 questions. What is wrong? Where do we want to go? And how can our dreams become reality? And so really, so those are the 3 circles in the middle, and actually the circles on the outside, those I added some other, another framework to it, which is a framework of empowering education by Ira Shaw. But for 3 weeks, I led a design camp for children where we focused on these questions. What is wrong? Where do we want to go? And how do our dreams become reality? Because design takes the visioning exercise of critical utopian action research a step further. You know, we don't always get to design when we're using this framework, but when we add to design when we add design to it, it means that we could go just beyond critiquing society, or just beyond the reflection of the activity, and we can take it into action, and the participants will have the opportunity to act to create the futures that they want. So this methodology was selected as it creates an opportunity for critique of life circumstances, for dreaming of a utopian solution, and finally action through design.
Thank you, Dr. Noel. Another example by Diti Tuting and Miti Baldet that was used in research project aimed at creating space for participation for marginalized young people in Copenhagen. The aim of that project was to provide group of radically marginalized young people opportunity to take part in changing process of the area. So this is like an area more of design thinking and social work. Also, another example that is dear to my heart and hit here home, it's the work of New Orleans People Assembly. I have been following for a while the work of the New Orleans People's Assembly, a local activism group. While they do not call their method critical utopian action research or utopian activism, many of their activities and actions seems motivated by the rejection of how certain aspect of life here in NOLA is at the moment and how protecting the current state from changes that might lead to an even worse of the situation, inspired by the idea that a better world is possible. Therefore, they try to exert influence on political policy, institution, and organizational system, especially that New Orleans People Assembly do believe that the problem are rooted in the foundation of the system and therefore need to be changed. They also, during their assembly, they stress in the foresight and futuristic solution to current problems. They also have very clear 10 tangible demands and clear way in how these demands can be met.
I'm muted. Yes. Okay. So Shaymaa, that's a good example. And actually, my interest in critical utopian action research has now led me to an interest in Afrofuturism. So, this kind of ties back to the last example that you were giving. So I'm now interested in Afrofuturism, social justice fiction, and the work of authors like Adrienne Marie Brown and Waitasha L. Womack and Walida Imarisha, where they are thinking of social justice issues and writing stories about the future around social justice. And I think that there's the opportunity to do really transformative work when we start to imagine things in the future. And so I guess that's a good transition as well into my next question. How do you think we can use these tools of like dreaming about the future and utopia and things like that during the pandemic? How can we use this to understand people's experience of the pandemic?
Okay, so critical utopian action research gives people space to be critical. It starts with critique, even when imagining the future, they are still critiquing the present. And with this method, move beyond just being critical though, and we get people to design things and the life that they want. As people design what they want, this gives the insight. For example, if we were a policymaker into the desire of the people, so this could be a way of creating a very people-centered policy and solutions. So Dr. Noel, since you have tried that before, from your experience, can you please share with us and show us how can we use that?
Okay, so now I have to get into
Yes.
character.
My favorite part. Let's see how I can do that.
Well, let's see if it will work. I'm gonna change. Let's see. All right, so I'm now in character. And so critical utopian action research requires us to be a little bit kind of fun because we're talking about the future. We're trying to get you to speculate. And, sometimes to do this, you have to get into this kind of crazy place. So this is a session, where being virtual actually helps us because we can be a little bit fun. But even in a face-to-face mode, I might do this with a superhero cape on, or I really have fun with it because you want to get people into an interesting space. So this example that I'm gonna have us try to do today, let's talk about the future of health, right? And so for this, we have to time travel, which is why I've put on my futuristic gear. And we are doing this future focus activity. We're now in 2050. Okay. And see, this is what we're all wearing in 2050. This is what's in fashion. But we're preparing a time capsule for people way back in 2020, which was that really, really, really difficult year. I mean, we in 2050 know that life's better now, but 2020 was a hard year. And people in 2020 may not know what they have to look forward to. So we're going to think specifically about public health and how fantastic public health is now. And then we're going to put some notes into our time capsule to send back to 2020 because they don't know it's that year with that crazy pandemic, and they don't know that public health is actually going to get better. So here's what I'm asking you all to do so as that we can give them some hope. We're going to tell them what's good in 2050 about public health. And here's my own example. So I'll tell my friends back in 2020, can you imagine that in 2050, I no longer have to worry about if my health insurance will cover an emergency health expense or a visit to the hospital? So I'm going to write my instructions on a sticky note. I should have been writing but we're all going to have these sticky notes. And so you are all going to claim a circle and write on the sticky note, what's the future of health in 2050 that the people in 2020 don't know yet is coming, but this is going to help them be able to get through the pandemic, to know that, okay, after we get beyond this phase, that's what we'll have to look forward to. So like in my case, as I said, it's that health insurance. I won't have to worry about that anymore. So we'll give you a little bit of time for you all to write about this fantastic public health in 2050.
Yeah, and just to everyone, I dropped the URL link on the chat. Please, if you don't know, just unmute and let me know how to use it and navigate if this is something new for you.
And you can write as many as you want.
Okay, we're gonna start our 5-minute timer, and I will try to share some.
If you're looking for ideas, you could look around the board and be inspired by other people's ideas as well.
Okay, I guess the 5 minute is, and my timer stopped.
Okay, so Shayma's gonna lead our debrief of this activity.
Okay, in talking about how fantastic the future is, we were able to uncover the difficulties of the present. So I just wanted to debrief a bit about the activity. What were some themes we can pull out from this sticky note? If anyone can unmute and share, or you can feel free to type on the chat.
I said that I think it would be really great to have a focus on preventative healthcare rather than treatment-based. I work in nutrition, so that's kind of my jam. And I think that that would be really awesome in 2050 if we could do that.
Thank you so much. I like that. Anyone else would like to see a theme or want to share a theme?
I'm seeing some stuff come up about not having to have your health and your work be in competition with each other. Work and health finding ways to make work not so stressful and life more healthy.
Okay, thank you. What stands out for you? What something caught up your eye?
I saw a lot of free. I think so. The cost is something that is really bothering people today. You know, people talk about either free healthcare or free insurance, which is the same as free healthcare. There was another free that I saw somewhere else. So, like, if I was analyzing it today, I mean, it's something kind of obvious, but you know, because people were talking about the future, we could see that this cost is really getting in the way today.
What could be a question that we can explore about COVID-19 using this method? Take a moment and think about it, either put it in the chats or you can speak it.
I think it's an upcoming question about vaccine availability and distribution. I think that's going to be an important question.
Okay. I see some questions in the chat, answers, sorry. Health isn't just curing disease or disability, but wellness. I like that. Can you repeat the question? It's like, how can we use that to ask the question? What could be a question that we can explore about the COVID-19 using this method? And I will drop the question in the chat as well.
So like it's like if we were asking people to imagine I don't know, imagine a utopia that's not affected by COVID or something like that, so that we could understand. Maybe that would be one. You know, how can we get people to imagine a world where we are not having to think about, I don't know, hugging people, touching people. I'm rambling on, but maybe somebody else has another version of the question.
I think I saw somebody say that pandemics will be ancient history. So I think a question we could ask is like, how did we so it's in 2050, how did we eradicate pandemics or something like that? And people can come up with like different ideas or different mechanisms that we did in the past to come up to get rid of pandemics.
There is a very good conversation actually in the chat. Albab, I don't know if I'm pronouncing the name right, but something I find interesting is that very few of these are unachievable. Everything has one version around the world. So that's very interesting. We need more like, yeah, How can we shape a pandemic response, learning from COVID, knowing that they will come again? That's also a very good question. Would make me ask everyone just to take a moment and choose one idea to focus in. So we're gonna use it in our next activity. How can we use this pandemic as an opportunity to make a healthcare system that benefit more people so that pandemic isn't as destructive as it has been? One things we cannot control is that nature will respond and we will always have pandemic. That's all a very good conversation, which and thoughts will take us to our next activity, which is the Fantasia phase. In this next activity, we'll put you into breakout rooms to do some design thinking work. So we saw some themes in the first activity. In breakout rooms, you'll be in a small group, share what was most important to your team members, and choose one big goal to move forward with that goal. Discuss it, and please come up with, at least four thoughts. You can draw or use a sticky note and look at the box with your room number. Please, a dream can be attained. Think big, think silly, think practical, think impractical, whatever your imagination can come up with. And I'm gonna send everyone to their breakout room.
Before you send people, I'm gonna just maybe give some tips to help get the action to happen. So, when you get into the breakout room, you could look around at all of the responses. You don't have to focus on your own responses, but each person in the breakout room can think of, okay, what do they think is the most important, right? And then after you hear that, then you could decide if there's one that you want to focus on, which there probably will. Something will rise to the surface. And then you're going to come up with a few alternatives. Okay, so we have the boxes down at the bottom where we have like 4 squares, and you can choose, you can draw, as Shaymaa said, in those boxes. Shaymaa, could you demonstrate how people find the pencil if you've never used mural?
It just disappeared from my, do you see?
So the pencil, yes, that's where the pencil in that gray bar. And then you can draw in the box. And drawing on mural is funny. It's going to take you back to 3rd grade or something like that, because nothing looks very sophisticated, but it's okay. We're all friends here. So you can draw something funny and crazy and whatnot, to think of the solutions that you could be using to address this problem, to help us get to where we are saying we want to get to in 2050. Anybody has any questions about what we're asking you to do when you go into the breakout rooms?
I was just wondering, are we picking one of the things from the circles, or are we doing the pandemic question that was in the chat?
You're unmuted.
Okay, we are starting off with the circles, actually. But it's almost like the same. They're kind of similar. But the circles are where we want to get to in 2050. So you're going to pick something somewhere that we say that we want to get to in 2050. And then you're going to design a something that will help us to get there. Yes? All right. So I think you can send us to the rooms now.
Okay. You should receive an invitation, correct? Did everyone receive an invitation? Hi, are we all back? No one get lost in the virtual. Oops, we have a few. Okay. I guess they might left. Okay, so I'm gonna just randomly call in a group, and if they could share what is their solution was about. Let's do room 3.
Room 3. Let me see where are my room 3 people. Michaeline, yes. And Christy. So yeah, Michaeline or Christy.
Yeah, so we had a really good conversation about, well, a couple great conversations, but some conversations about wage equality, which was really interesting. So we were talking about wage equality, and then we were also talking a little bit about how we could incentivize doctors to provide. First of all, the issue that we decided to work on was just equity in the insurance process and just in the coverage process and access to healthcare. So we were talking about how maybe we could incentivize healthcare workers to work in traditionally redlined communities. But a stipulation would be that they have to live and work in those communities. So they're stimulating the economy with their money that they're making from their job. Also, we talked about requiring all doctors to accept insurance, because Christy had a really interesting commentary on how healthcare works where she lives. I'm not sure if you want to share that, Christy.
Well, I was just saying I live in Los Angeles and a lot of the best doctors are in Beverly Hills and they won't take insurance. You just have to pay them cash, like $200 or $300 an hour if you want to go. And a lot of the best doctors are there. So you just can't see them because who has $300 an hour?
Thank you. That's interesting. So I move it to my future cone, which is a funnel of the idea. So we are here and we're trying to find that solution. And I think this is a possible or a probably solution that we might work. Okay, so room 1. Can anyone share from room 1?
Yeah, so are we just sharing some of the ideas we came up with?
Yeah, but like the one that you could share with us, the one that you think it's the most or what you like the most about it. Does that make sense? Like you think we can work now to make it happen, or a solution that you found?
Yeah, so one thing that we kind of talked about, so our kind of theme that we were trying to work with was affordability. And I feel like that has a lot of different facets, kind of. So one thing that we kind of talked about was having like pharmaceutical companies kind of like help local communities and being able to like afford healthcare. We didn't talk too much about how exactly that would look, but it was just kind of like an idea that we kind of proposed.
Pharmaceutical companies to help with local communities. Okay, that's I see it's kind of the same thing with the wage. Like this, I can see an emerging theme. Okay, one more room, so we can do room 4. Ooh, anyone from room 4?
Hey, I'll just start and the other two can weigh in. We were discussing it a bit and we settled it on kind of an emergency response situation, emergencies, and just getting it like a seamless, no paperwork, immediate response, no matter what happens, you get your help. And we just started plugging some ideas in there. So.
Okay. Thank you so much.
So we've got magic bracelet, we've got drone delivery, things that sort of bypass connectivity in emergencies, I mean, in physical environment. Nevi or
that's interesting.
Sneha, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, we talked about how, like in emergency situations, it's very difficult to access healthcare services. So something that could be worked upon in 2050 is like kind of automation of like communication of emergency needs, or something that we can come up with as a magic health bracelet. And yeah.
I like that. Um, since we are kind of a small group, let's go ahead and share with room 2. Can please someone from room 2?
Yeah, I can go. I was with Christina from room 2, and we kind of got on this theme about communities and focusing directly on the community involvement, possibly, whether this is through and the ideas that we came up with were like green spaces and community gardens, all like kind of under the theme of community and preventive care. With having green spaces means people are more likely to be outside and get fresh air and exercise, leading to healthier lifestyles, and then funding and more resources and education to make community gardens more successful in areas all around wherever they would be successful at, to help people, I think, kind of edit their lifestyle to where they're more in control of growing their own food, or just learning the process about growing food to possibly alter their lifestyles.
Just from sharing all of these like very nice ideas, do you feel like this is impossible, or this is achievable? I think that's one of like, it seems like, yeah, it's achievable and we can work toward something. Okay. As anyone want to add any other ideas? I like that it's already happening. Okay, as a researcher, we might think that there is no space for dreaming. How can we minimize health disparities in post-COVID world sometimes seems hard. We are in a holding mode right now. So focus on the future and give some hope. We shared a few examples that actually some people use that in social work and in other, in design thinking. And so critical utopian action is a method there to be explored. Leslie, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, people are putting some really nice ideas into the chat. But Laura said it's happening already. Christy says, putting it like this makes it feel more impossible, more possible, not impossible, right? And Nevi writes, just a matter of trying to make these innovations less privatized and more accessible. So I think, yes, definitely. Rwanda's using drones already. Rwanda's a really interesting case. It might be like everybody in Rwanda is already in 2050 because they've had, I think that there are places around the world where maybe there are governments that are really future focused. I lived in Curitiba in Brazil for 6 years. And for all of the time that I lived there, I felt like the administration was just dreaming of what is possible. So, I mean, way back in the early 90s, people were exchanging garbage for food. And, there were all of these initiatives that I think only seem futuristic because somebody had that kind of vision, and I think we're going to kind of open it up for some chat. But, something like critical utopian action research can help us to really understand what affects people now in the present, and then starts to kind of break open our own boxes of what is possible. Thinking about this future space means that we can start to think about how we can get somewhere without the kinds of barriers that we think can happen today. Because, very often if you're brainstorming with policymakers or certain kinds of people, they'll say, oh, well, we can't do this because of this law. We can't do this because those people won't do whatever. But if we put it way out there, 2050, 2070, the year 2100, then, all of the barriers that exist today just can't, right? So maybe, I don't know if anyone wants to just kind of comment a little bit on how do you think you could use this method, right? I'll open it up, or even while you think, oh, I see somebody. Yes, Renata, you're going to jump in.
Thank you, Dr. Leslie. I really see it a very interesting methodology to elicit people to talk about taboo stuff, for instance. Because if they think it's imagination and they think it's okay, it's okay to talk about things that we see not doable, as you just indicated, the discussion down the road can lead people to find actual, real, doable, feasible solution for real problems of today. So imagining the impossible or the dream of what we wish to can lead down the road to something doable. So it just like to allow the people and to provoke them to involve in the discussion. That's what I really like the most about this research method, because usually the discussions end, oh, that's not doable, oh, that's not, as you just indicated. But once you allow people to share their knowledge and discuss, solution can come from the intersect of knowledge and background and cultures.
Yes,
that's the most what I like. Thank you for sharing this knowledge, you and Shaymaa. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wants to share how you think you could use this?
Thank you so much, Rana. I just want to comment really quickly. It's interesting when she mentioned about taboo, because this is actually a known method. It's been used in theater and mainly therapeutic theater, where they do a lot of this imagination and discuss to get the feelings. And so it's actually been used in so many different. So once you mentioned that, it just remembered that. Thank you so much for sharing.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And so like when we were doing our research, we started to think of like who is actually using this, because it is a real method and people are using it. And we found that it was being used by social workers to work with youth from marginalized backgrounds, policymakers, educators, and they're using this method around questions related to social problems, community development. Actually, like in my research, even though I was working with children, we were looking at the community and we were looking at, okay, what are the problems in the community and what's the imaginary solutions that these children wanted? So community development, social change, climate change, environmental justice. So all of these are contexts where people are using this idea of utopia to get people to imagine something that is better. Right. Still want to see if I could get a few people to say something. I see somebody. Yes, Reynard, I see you jumping back in.
I just would like to recap that I understood the method correctly. So it's basically imagining you are in the future about a certain theme, putting possible problematic or critique stuff you want to get rid of it by the time of the future, then trying to focus on one big theme and find solution for it. That's how the process works, correct?
Yeah, when I looked it up first, which is like, I think back in 2016, I found this version of the framework. It was just 3 questions. And so I use that in most of the work that I'm doing, where one, we're asking what is wrong. And this is actually maybe some variance to how some people do design /design thinking work, because often, we have to be all like super positive and all that, because that was a critique that I would get sometimes in design thinking work, where people said, we have to be all happy in this design thinking thing, but allowing people to start off and say, well, you know what? The world is crappy, so it's giving people space to talk about what is wrong. That's where this method starts. And then we move to the future, right? So like we started off saying, okay, public health in 2020 is a problem. Those people back in 2020 don't know, they need some hope to get through this. And then we went to where we want to go and we started to imagine, move beyond that. And then the third step is, how do we get there? So it's just these 3 questions that are going to then guide your research process. And then you can do different things along the way. But if you just keep in mind, I'm just asking these 3 questions, then it actually makes the research easy and doable, and you can do it in a very fun way. Or you could be a little more practical, but I think it's always nice when it's fun.
I was thinking about, I work with seniors and I work with younger kids. I have 4 kids. I'm thinking about something multi-generational, especially since we're talking about what we can do to drive the future. We have people, maybe older people, who've seen the effects of change over time, and then the younger people who are really driving what's coming up. So I don't, it's just an idea of, working across these different generational divides and getting, because they, people come from real different perspectives at different ages. So I thought maybe that would be an interesting way to get the conversation started.
Yeah, that's nice. That's interesting.
There is actually, you remind me by a group in England, and they're Utopian Society, and they have this art project where they pair children, a child with a dementia, a person with dementia, and they start drawing and dreaming to find solution for dementia people, because the children have this reactive, and the person will explain. And it turns to be a really interesting. So when you mentioned that, it's actually very interesting to see that, that thought. Thank you. That was
hold on. But speaking of multi-generational ideas, we have design thinking breakfast on Friday, where we'll have Marcelo Paiva, who is an expert on design for inclusivity, but he's doing the opposite. Well, I don't know, it's because we went to the future. I guess he's taking us to the future and making us look back. He's going to ask us to design for he is asking us to think about the future. We have to design for our future self. Yes. Yeah. Naisha, you want to tell us a little bit about that before we close?
Yes. So yes, this Friday we will have a design thinking breakfast. And as Leslie was saying, we will be designing for our future selves. So it's supposed to be, I'm not going to give away any details, but it's definitely supposed to be kind of a reflexive type of exercise. So please join us if you can.
Okay, thank you. So Shaymaa, I guess now it's over to you again.
I was really hoping if everyone can just write us something on the board again, one thing you like, one thing you wish, and one thing you wonder, so we can know what works, what doesn't work. And I want to thank everyone from coming today to this workshop, and would love to hear your feedback in the sticky note if you can, please. And we would love to know, where did you come from, if you don't mind sharing. And we would love also if you can share your LinkedIn connection, so we stay in touch. Thank you.
All right, so thank you, everyone. So we are almost at time. We're gonna still hang around for a little bit. So if people wanna drop, again, continue dropping stuff in the chat, or yes, as Shaymaa said, we have references on the board that you can check out. You can keep your mural open, and then we will email you a link to the video, a link to the mural, and I'm not sure what else and maybe an invitation for the next workshop as well. So on that note, thank you everyone for coming out tonight.
I just wanted to say thank you for telling me the third question. I just put it in the chat, but I went to a meeting once where they said they were doing this, but they only got to the second question. And it was so disappointing because we were all like, great, in the future, it's going to be awesome. And then they didn't have us go back and think about what we could do now.
To get there, yes, that's the important question.
So anticlimactic. It was horrible. So thank you for filling in the third question for me.
Yes, and it's easy to remember, it's just what's wrong, where do we want to go, and how do we get there?
Yes, thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. All right, I suppose you could end